Welcome to the fourth and final for Series 8 podcast review of Doctor Who. Again, this is the last one. Next week I'll be back reviewing Darkwater, I believe is the title. I'll be writing that as normal. My PhD will all be done. I will have submitted, which is why we're recording these things in the first place. And I will write my reviews for the last two parts. But we are still here. We are here for this last one. We're going to make it a party.
It's a party. Everyone's invited.
Everyone's invited. Yeah, good. And that other voice, of course, is my ever faithful Doctor Who reviewing companion. Companion. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But Owen, how are you doing, Owen?
Which is relevant given this whole is Clara really the Doctor / the Master / business? Yes. Hello, Nathan. We did, dear listener, we did of course again invite Aaron on. This time he completely ignored. I think he thought I was joking. But yeah, he just doesn't want to talk to you. Any of you.
Basically.
Yeah.
Owen, you've moved house this week.
We moved house. This is why we are recording Friday, which is as late as is probably feasible to record this. We moved house to a village or small town where my wife and I, Helen, help lead a church plant. And that's really exciting, but it has been a very stressful week, and we don't have internet access yet at home. So, hence the delay, for which apologies.
No problem at all. I don't know why I said that, as if I was the
listener.
No problem, Owen. Forgiven, immediately forgiven. But anyway, yeah, that's good. So hopefully that will all relax up for you guys, and you'll get to settle in soon. But yes, indeed, we apologise for the delay. Let's just put it this way: we're not entirely sure, are we, Owen, that this particular episode in The Forest of the Night by Frank Boyce deserved anything more than a last day recording. But
I wonder whether that's people who saw it assume that's why there hasn't been a podcast, because we thought so little of it.
Yes,
and they'd probably be right. It is probably the first episode this season, and this season has got very mixed reviews, but it's the first episode this season we would offer a thumbs down on.
I think so. We have gone on record before, and I'd go on record again as saying that Series 8 of Doctor Who is possibly one of the best so far, certainly since the return of the series in 2005. But this episode was, I would say it's certainly the worst so far. Yeah,
and I mean, to be absolutely fair to Season 8, Season 2, which many people say is the best season, included the other two regularly considered weakest episodes, Love and Monsters and Fear Her, which we discussed last week. Fear Her involved Doctor Who saving the London Olympics, and Love and Monsters included a Peter Kay fat monster consuming people and turning them into parts of his bum.
I'm more sympathetic with that episode than others are, but yeah, I can totally see why that...
But in terms of the general opinion of it, generally speaking, those are considered to be the weakest episodes in New Who.
Yeah.
And I think this one does join that. So if Season 2 can get away with it, Season 8 can get away with it.
So what? I mean, let's just jump right into this, right? So what was exactly... because when I heard Frank Boyce, the writer of the Olympic ceremonies, and those, the introduction and the closing ceremonies, I thought they were really good. And
in fact, he's a respected screenwriter.
Well, indeed. And also a children's writer, so like often children's writers like Stephen Moffat, he's got this sort of instinct for children's imaginations, and usually they write really good episodes and come up with really good villains, etc., etc. But perhaps one of the problems with this episode is that it didn't really have a villain, but we'll talk about that later. But so when I heard that Frank Boyce was writing this episode, I was excited. I think this could genuinely work. So what went wrong? What was the problem with this? Is it the fact that it was villainless? I mean, in the technical sense, what were your thoughts on where it made a misstep?
I'm not sure if I'd say that was the problem. I would say, one, as a particular item of praise, I think Peter Capaldi deserves like a George Cross or something for his heroic efforts to save the episode.
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi was fantastic. He had a dud script and he acted his heart out to save it. It didn't work. It didn't succeed. There were some good moments though. To be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what was wrong with it? I'm not sure the lack of a villain was meant from, because of course what it actually turns out to be is that the apparent villain is actually trying to save the planet by protecting the planet Earth from a solar flare, and that was part of the problem, because it was so saccharine and disgusting and horribly put out, like especially the ridiculous "we've tiny bits of light who have been here since the beginning of time.
Yeah, that was weird.
Like, and it's like, and then they're like, but we don't know who you are, Doctor. I know you've saved the planet more times than we have, but screw you.
Yeah, screw you, Doctor. I tell you what. There was one moment, and there are very, very few Doctor Who episodes that make me literally scream at the screen. Scream at the screen. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And one of them would be, for example, Power of Three. I screamed at the screen in like complete disbelief at how rubbish the last 10 minutes were.
Yeah.
And there are other moments too where I've sort of gone, that is just really pants, and I think a lot of them were in around sort of series 2. But I literally screamed at the screen with my wife on the other sofa, in disgust at that very last scene of this episode where her sister is found in the bush.
Oh yeah. I screamed at, literally also shouted.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. That was just.
She was like, was she hiding in the bush the whole time?
But why was she bent down? Like, where was she doing? Just waiting there? Just like, I know that, don't get me wrong, right? I know that the whole point is that this mysterious light particles have brought her sister back, but there's no, I would love an explanation as to how that happened, one, and two, what on earth was she doing just waiting, like staring out of the bush, like crouched down, and then she rises up with this sort of weird look on her face that is completely uninterpretable, and then the episode flipping finishes and no one says a single thing.
I would say, generally speaking, initially, so the girl who plays the psychic little girl whose sister goes missing, who the sister turns up in a bush, she actually started out fine for a cute kid role.
Yeah.
And it just got very, very, in terms of another annoying thing, the bit where the kind of little light particles who have lived there since the beginning of time and have saved the Earth from natural disasters, they talk to her, and the way that this little girl, this poor 9-year-old girl or something, was told to act out the fact, was to like swipe in front of her face.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was literally thinking that was my problem with her as well. I didn't think she did that very well at all.
No, given that she started out fine, there's also the whole business where it's like, the forts, they're giving me forts. Like this awful. Bless her. You can't blame her if she can't enunciate thoughts and not,
Her name was Maeve, by the way. Her name was Maeve. How would you spell that?
I would have spelt it one of two ways, but Maebh or Maeve.
Goodness, listeners, right? This is why I don't like Owen sometimes, because he's one of the most intelligent people that I've ever met, and sometimes he comes up with all sorts of answers. If I asked a normal person, right, how would you spell Maeve? They would, like me, have said Maive. But of course, Owen is aware of all the various etymological variants, and well done. Yes, that is exactly how her name is spelled. I honestly thought I was like, Maeve, that's obviously M-A-Y or M-A-I, but yeah, it's this sort of Celtic name. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, I'm not...
Didn't she have she had a really meaningful name? Is that, Maeve Arden, Arden, like the forest of Arden, like trees.
Oh, yeah, good point.
What about that tiger, though? What about it wasn't even a CGI tiger, but it's a tiger CGI'd.
Yeah, I'm not... Look, the question of the CG in this episode is kind of like... It is a genuinely good one, because sometimes it was okay, and then sometimes it was really bad. Like, for example, when the people came in to flame down the forest, right? Which is a thing in itself, right? Why? Because I don't even know why... Okay, we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. But when they flamethrowered the trees in the middle of London, possibly causing a massive forest fire in a hugely populated city, which, by the way, why did we see anyone else? But that's by the by. But, the flames, like the fire effects, just were really bad. Like, really poor.
No, I think the CG, this series has had very good CG. I think this episode, for some reason, like the fire effects, the editing of the animals, I think the animals were just awkward. Not the wolves so much. The wolves actually looked good, at least. Yeah. But like the tiger, I think was when the wolves were interacting with the humans and the tiger was interacting with the humans, it looked ridiculous. It was very clunkily edited. It looked very 70s. It reminded me very strongly of the old Who. Yeah, it's a good point. It did, like, Pertwee era, definitely, sort of like bad editing to get the point across. And the acting in response was probably the most embarrassing moment of Peter Capaldi's Doctor Who will always be how they try to be scared of a tiger. Yes, I think so. And I also just wasn't convinced of how they were saved from that, which was, Danny flashing a torch in the lion's face, or tiger's face. I just genuinely
How does that work? Can we please ask like a zookeeper?
Zoologist, yeah.
Yeah, like a zoologist. If I went into that lion cage right now, tiger cage, whatever, and flashed this torch, would I not get my arm ripped off? And I can
another person to praise in the whole thing. You mentioned Danny. I mean, he was fine. But the girl Ruby, the girl who played Ruby, I actually thought she was pretty good.
There were a couple of the kids were actually quite cool. Like the little boy who says, you know, I will go, but you got to stop calling me teen.
Yeah.
Calling us teen. I thought he had some, you know, some good swag.
No, the kids
know?
on the whole, genuinely, the kids did do a good job, and the kid who played Maeve just had a dud moment. And I suspect, you know, in the end, when you tell some kid to be like, act like you're being talked to by tiny lights who've lived here since the beginning of the world.
Yeah, I think even Capaldi would have struggled with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, broadly speaking, by the way, I think we could now probably say that Series 8 has had the strongest child actors in probably the entirety of Doctor Who. Right?
Yeah, I imagine so. It has. I think it's a shame, and a really interesting concept for an episode, even if they'd executed more or less the same plot, but just done it differently and better. You could see it being a good episode or an alright episode. But even the clunky idea, even the clunky kind of central plot dynamic, you know, was exacerbated. You know, even if you accept that, it's exacerbated by some bad acting, some bad effects, just a rubbish script.
Yeah, and just some really, like, I was just thinking of that moment towards the beginning of the episode as they're passing out of the museum, right? And they spot, and Clara has one of her kids spot the rings on the tree, and this big red ring on the tree, and it was so obvious that was like it wasn't subtly as a plot device. It wasn't plot hint. I don't know quite what the phrase would be. It wasn't subtly introduced. It was like a sledgehammer. Like, this is significant. And then when they bring it back later, it just felt lazy and cheap. And it just didn't. Everything from how they built up the plot and hinted to the ending to the actual resolution just felt cheap and unsatisfying. And I would also include in this, by the way, we've commented before, haven't we, in our reviews, that Clara has been brilliant this series, and particularly her relationship with the Doctor has been really well executed and is really tantalizing. You know, we want to see how that goes about concluding. But here in this episode, you get this bizarre sort of inversion of Kill the Moon. Did you get that? So, like, literally the same phrase is quoted, you know, I breathe your air, I walk on the same earth. And I thought, oh, snap, you know, the Doctor's quoting Clara.
Exactly. That whole thing at the end was very convoluted. As in, I thought the Doctor saying that was really good in terms of his...
Yeah, I thought he was, as I say, it was like an oh, snap moment, like he's got her there. And I thought that was going to do something to Clara's character, like she was going to, in her eyes, you could just see this sort of coming in, but in terms of how she was directed and in terms of the writing, in terms of what she had to actually say, it just felt like it fell like a lead balloon. This amazing moment where he could use her words against just felt pants.
Well, I think it's now we've had these two false endings of their relationship.
Yeah. As
in that Clara has in different ways dumped the Doctor twice. And neither of them have stuck, and it just felt, it was multiple endings to the episode. And of course,
do you get the impression, by the way, that ordinarily, like, Stephen Moffat wouldn't let this sort of script in, and that it was purely because Frank Boyce, or rather Frank Cottrell Boyce,
that it got a lighter hand because of who it was. Yes.
Yeah. This guy's written the Olympics. He must be good. Well, you know, there are other people, undoubtedly, like last week's episode. I've forgotten his name now. It's not Jamie Matheson. Whoever wrote
Jamie Matheson.
Jamie Matheson, yeah, who wrote Mummy on the Orient Express and Flatline. As I said in last week's review, he revealed in the Doctor Who magazine that he'd been trying to get into Doctor Who for ages. And then you got to think, right? How did Matheson, the writer of Flatline, which is probably one of the best Doctor Who episodes since 2005, how did he get rejected? And yet Frank Cottrell Boyce, the writer of In the Forest of the Night, this rather lazy, cheaply resolved episode, how did he get, like, as you say, a light hand and probably an easy pass? I don't know.
Absolutely. Let's point out one other cringeworthy, horrendous moment. So, what will happen? What's going to happen to the Earth now? The trees, like this bizarre thing about the trees all disappearing, which made no sense.
Yeah.
Oh, what will happen? Oh, they'll just forget. Oh, what? Because of some telepathic zone that these creatures...
Oh, yeah.
No, just they'll forget, because humans forget, don't they?
That was so... It felt like Boyce was, like, copying Moffat's, like, worst tropes.
Oh, the rings of Akaten. Not that the same thing happened, but the same sort of cringe-worthy sort of...
Yeah.
Ex machina that kind of... We're just going to disappear now, just like Amy's emotion killed the monster or something.
Yeah, it was terrible. I think the best thing about the episode really has to be twofold. First, as you say, Capaldi's acting, which was brave and admirable, but ultimately didn't succeed in saving the episode. But then secondly, more importantly, was the trailer for Darkwater, the parts 1 and 2.
Oh, sorry, one more thing I hated about the episode, Nathan.
You what, sorry?
One more thing.
Yeah.
The fact they ring the world on their mobiles.
Yes! No, it was someone else's point. Yeah, what the heck? They ring everyone on... Like, most people would just be going, who the hell is this? Like, putting it down or even not even answering the darn thing. But then the other thing is, someone else has pointed out, why on earth did her mum go out on, like, a bike in the middle of this dangerous, newly developed apocalyptic forest when clearly the mobile networks were working and they all had their blooming mobile phones on them? That didn't make any sense.
She went to Trafalgar Square, even though she wasn't going to pick her daughter up from Trafalgar Square.
Oh yeah, what was she doing?
Well, she just, like, she surely would have gone to the school, to Coal Hill. Oh, I'll go to Coal Hill in East London.
Or she would even think my daughter was on a school trip because I signed that permission slip last night. And,
well, I suppose when you've got your other daughter hiding in a bush outside your house for years.
Oh, indeed. But you got to wonder what kind of kid she's raising. But I don't know. But yeah, what was she doing? Just in the bush. Seriously, sorry. I'm just remembering that scene again. Just like her eyes just staring at, and there was a brief hint. Ooh, is it a tiger? No, it's your 13-year-old runaway daughter, who is also, by the way, a mute. Like, I don't get that.
We didn't tell you, she's a mute.
It's bizarre. Yeah, I mean, man, this episode was quite disappointing, and yet other people have seemed, have said that they've enjoyed it.
It's higher than for Kill the Moon. Just looking at the audience appreciation, it's higher than for Listen, Robot Sherwood, Deep Breath, and Kill the Moon.
Are you joking? So the audience appreciation of In the Forest of the Night, this mess, higher than Kill the Moon.
The official way of finding out how many people actually liked episodes. They talked to lots of people who watched it, and it's got an 83, which I think is out of 100. Kill the Moon, Listen, Robot Sherwood, and Deep Breath are at 82.
It's funny because before we started the recording for this, before we started doing this, I said to you that this is probably going to be the first negative podcast that less than positive podcast review that we do, and it'll prove that we're not just uncritical fanboys. Now, actually, on that point, let's jump off that point. I think a lot of these high ratings and high scores has got a lot to do with the fact that Doctor Who fans, on the whole, don't like. They're either like it's at two extremes, right? It's either Doctor Who fans think everything is rubbish because they're holding up this antiquated standard, whether Blink or the classic series, or they're like completely uncritical and everything is amazing, when actually the beauty of Doctor Who is that it's a mix of amazing episodes and terrible episodes, and there aren't as many terrible ones as you think, and there probably aren't as many amazing ones.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if there's much more to talk about, really.
We can move on to talking about the finale quickly before we finish. Yeah, so I mean, it has been Moffat's traditional problem. It's a mild criticism, but his traditional problem was having too many plates spinning and having too many things that were confused or you didn't really understand or that weren't resolved for ages, for years. The problem this season has been that his two threads, which are interrelated, the Doctor and Clara's relationship, which has mostly been very good, and Missy, have essentially just dragged on without resolution, but without any real mystery, just kind of like they're there.
Yeah.
Because that is a frustration I have, that, as I say, there's a bit of a false second breakup between the Doctor and Clara this past week. And Missy has appeared last week to say, oh yes, I'm so pleased I chose Clara. But essentially, I'm kind of interested in her, but she's not a great mystery to me. I'm like, oh, well, I guess we'll find out in the finale.
Well, from what I gather, I mean, I've read some of the preview stuff, the preview, like the non-spoiler reviews, like the best ones, by the way, if you're listening, I would say Doctor Who TV.co.uk and Den of Geek. They do the best non-spoiler reviews. But there are other Doctor Who sites available. But in the non-spoiler reviews, by the way, yeah, there's a lot made of the fact that it's pretty much all spoilery. Like, and they say that even before the first of all, they've excised 2 scenes from the preview episode shown to critics, and secondly, even before the intro hits, something massively spoilery happens which they can't reveal. So it sounds like it's going to be a very sort of sensational, if not sensationalist, who knows, we're yet to find out, couple of episodes.
Yeah, and certainly, who knows really, it's probably that, and it's something where we'll worry, I suspect, until we see it tomorrow or whenever, or Sunday. We will worry that it's going to be sensationalist, it's going to be this extreme thing where everything's dramatic. But, I mean, for instance, if Clara, this whole thing about, oh my word, Clara's going to be flesh, isn't she? Do you remember that kind of embarrassing flesh stuff?
Yeah.
She's going to be flesh. But when she's like, Clara Oswald never existed, I know a guy I know on Facebook says something where I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. And then I was like, oh no, maybe it's not. Because it'd be an awful plot twist, probably.
It'd be terrible.
Nothing has happened since Asylum of the Daleks.
But of course
that's his idea, is nothing has happened since Asylum of the Daleks.
Oh man, that would be terrifying. Almost like a J.J. Abrams sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And he's being tortured by the Daleks.
Oh gosh, let's hope not. It's like those bizarre, like you seem to have taken on the wacky theory for the week. Like, because last week I said about how Clara is the Doctor, and the week before that Danny is the Doctor, and this, I think yours is even worse.
One of them is the Master is the other option. Yeah, everyone's the Master. Our friend Dan responded to our last one by saying, yeah, I have this fear that next week, the Forest of the Night, they'll be saying the Tiger is the Master,
yeah.
Which I think sums up probably the standard credulity of the fan community at times, let's be honest.
Indeed. Yeah, you know what, yeah, I remember before River Song's identity was revealed, just everything, she's the Rani! It's always the Rani. Why the Rani?
No one likes the Rani.
Like, why do people want to bring back I don't even, anyway, never mind. But
Romana, maybe.
We did say in last week's podcast review, though, that if Moffat pulls this off, if he does so at the same level of quality that he has generally, excluding Forest of the Night, right, that he has generally maintained throughout Series 8 so far, if he pulls this off, then we are possibly looking at the best finale
of the new season,
of the new series ever. Like, it could be genuinely that good, or it could just be very good. Sort of like, yeah, fair enough.
That was good. Yeah. And obviously I think, we don't want to be disappointed, but I think so. Let's make some speculations. Let's put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
Clara will die. I'm even more certain of that.
Yeah, I think we both said that after Kill the Moon, and Clara will die. I'm absolutely convinced as well. I think that it's very clear.
Especially with the Clara Oswald has never existed business.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, I think Clara will die, and I will add to that theory, or at least furnish it with some more speculation. And I would say that what we're going to see is, I mean, some of the early synopses are saying, the Doctor has to make a terrible decision, and we're dealing with Missy, who's clearly the sort of guardian of the afterlife, blah blah blah. And I think basically what the Doctor will be faced with is his death or Clara's, and we'll probably find. Well, there'll probably be some sort of, I don't know, if it follows down a cliched Doctor Who lines, what you'll find is the Doctor about to make that terrible decision for Clara's sake, and then Clara stepping in at the last minute in a sort of Katrina moment. Look her up if you're not aware of who she is. And then, I think that's possibly how it will play out, but who knows, maybe it won't be that predictable.
And I think what we can also say is that Paradise / heaven, death in heaven, is obviously not going to be heaven because, it's Stephen Moffat's programme. This isn't going to be the end of Les Mis where they're literally in heaven. This is going to be a sort of, heaven is a space station run by the Master, or something like that. So we can say that it's not literally going to have a spiritual dimension, it's going to be thoroughly sort of New Who, secular sci-fi. And I know Nathan wrote a very good article for Donor Geek saying that's complicated, but I think we can say overall that's pretty much how New
Yeah, I expect certainly, as I said in that article, like Moffat's run of the series has definitely been the most antagonistic.
even though Moffat himself is probably not as antagonistic as Rusty, which is weird.
Yeah, it's a weird inversion, but I like yourself, I thoroughly expect whatever the truth actually is, that it will be thoroughly grounded in real life explanation. But hopefully Moffat will handle it in such a way that he doesn't try some meta explanation that does away with all hints of the transcendent and unexplained, because I think that would just be so boring for a start that it would be a bad decision. But it would also retain, as you say, Owen, this sort of complicated Doctor Who relationship with matters of faith.
Yeah, given they're using the imagery, he's going to have to address that in some way. I think, yeah, I'm happy to go with Missy being the master. I think that's, the money's on that probably. If I have to, and I know in the end she may not be at all, but I think Missy's to do with Gallifrey. That's where we're going next.
I really hope so. On that, I was literally about to say the same thing. I really hope that Death in Heaven will hint strongly, if not point explicitly, in the direction of the Doctor's going to Gallifrey, because that is what he needs. I was saying this to my wife Jo the other night, that one of my big problems so far, and I think I said this to you as well, and my big problem so far with this series, again, broadly love it, but big problem is that the Doctor isn't really the Doctor, in the sense that he's not a Time Lord. He's not really being presented as a Time Lord, capital T, capital L. Like, that aspect of Doctor Who mythology has been largely absent. And it would be brilliant to see...
Which is funny, given what Day of the Doctor did.
Yeah.
I.e. the fact that it was all about how he rescues Gallifrey and how he's going to go back there.
Yeah, and I actually, the funny thing is that I think Capaldi would not only do a great job being a Time Lord, capital T, capital L, but I actually think Capaldi himself would love that. Like, I think you can tell that he's just a massive Doctor Who geek, and that he would genuinely revel in the opportunity to be the Gallifreyan. But yeah.
So yeah, any more predictions from you for tomorrow night?
No, I don't think so. I think we might well do another podcast. I said at the beginning that we wouldn't, but coming to think of it, like the finale, certainly we should try and do something. Even maybe do something written and a podcast for that, because it would be brilliant to have this sort of verbal communication of after tomorrow's episode. Say, what the hell, what's just happened, what's going to happen. We might well do that, but no promises. But it might be a good idea, don't you think?
Maybe we'll do it.
Maybe, no promises. Alright, well, unless you've got anything further to add about Forest of the Night or the two-part finale, we should probably stop there and give our listeners a break. Yeah,
let's do that. Yeah, and please do get in touch with your ideas and comments, especially if you hated the episode.
Indeed.
Or, in fact, if you can open our eyes to why, in fact, it was an underappreciated work of genius, do that. How can they get in touch with us, Nathan? Because I don't know these things.
Yes, you can get in touch with the Long Defeat blog and us specifically in various different ways. You can go to thelongdefeat.weebly.com to visit our website, and on there you can go to the About page and fill in a form submission, and we'll get that right to our lovely email, which also so happens to be thelongdefeat@outlook.com, or you can Twitter us. You can Twitter us. You can tweet us at Long Defeat Blog. That is at Long Defeat Blog. Or you can go to Facebook and like us and talk to us one-on-one if you're so inclined at facebook.com/The Long Defeat Blog. But all of these various different ways to contact us, we'd love to hear from you and just generally hear your thoughts. But Owen, any final words?
I'm looking forward to next week. For all the bad experience of last Saturday, I'm looking forward to tomorrow, like in a Stockholm syndrome sufferer.
I'll agree with that. So it is goodbye from him, goodbye from me, and we'll see you very soon. Bye!